I want to now bring in NBC News Pentagon correspondent Courtney Kube. Huma Abedin is also here. She served as the Deputy Chief of Staff for former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. And Hala Garani is back with us today. She's an author and veteran journalist covering the Middle East. Courtney, I want to start with you because you initially broke this story of the United States sending additional planes and ships closer to Israel. We were chatting before the show started. Can you just break down for folks out there what exactly are these ships going there for? Because the caliber of ships that are being moved and the personnel on those ships, this is not just for show.
Right. You are absolutely right about that. So this is a carrier strike group. So it includes an aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, which, by the way, has not only thousands of sailors on board, but it also has a number of aircraft, including fixed wing, including helicopters. It is a full complement of an air wing on board. But in addition to that, it's the supporting ships. So we're talking a cruiser, several destroyers. Those have anti-air capability, anti-ship capability, even anti-submarine capability. So this is it's a war-fighting group that they are sending in. Now, that being said, carrier strike groups are often sent in as a show of presence, a show of strength, a way to deter. That's one reason that a strike group will often be sent in. It also has a second capability of, if in fact there is some sort of a call for a large non-combatant evacuation, civilians having to leave Israel, that provides a platform for that. So the U.S. could bring people safely out onto these ships. They can carry thousands of additional people just to get them out of harm's way very quickly, if need be. Now, I have to stress, that's still, there's some planning going on for the possibility, but nothing has been ordered for any kind of a non-combatant evacuation. That would be an enormous logistical undertaking. We're talking tens of thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands, Americans and dual citizens who are there in Israel right now. So the carrier strike group really provides all those capabilities in one.
Hala, I want to talk about, we have been discussing and yesterday just about the way in which these Hamas militants were able to infiltrate Israel. And you zeroed in on the paragliding elements of this large-scale attack. On Twitter, you asked, is it possible some of this training took place outside of Gaza? What would the implications be if that was in fact true?
So this is, at this point, a question that everyone is asking, because if this attack was several months in the planning, how is it possible that Israeli security and intelligence was not able to detect, for instance, paragliding exercises in Gaza? Is it possible that in the same way that Hamas militants smuggle weaponry and supplies through tunnels, they were able also to get some of their fighters out in order to undergo some training, some paragliding training? This is all speculation at this point because it was such a spectacular intelligence failure on the part of the Israelis. Also, within the Gaza Strip itself, you now have a situation where there are possibly more than 100 Israeli civilians and soldiers held captive, some of whom are children, small children. Now, Raf Sanchez earlier mentioned Gilad Shalit, who was captured in a cross-border raid in 2006. It took 5 years of negotiations to get one soldier out. In exchange for that one soldier, the Israelis surrendered more than 1,000 fighters, 280 of whom had been sentenced to life in prison for plotting to attack targets inside of Israel. So even if we're seeing this huge buildup of military forces on the border with Gaza, my guess is that a ground invasion is not likely to happen in short order here, because we're talking about a very dangerous situation, not just for the troops entering Gaza, but endangering the lives potentially of some of these hostages. My guess is they've already been spread out across the Gaza Strip, which is a small territory, about 2 times the size of Washington, D.C., but still this would be urban warfare, door to door, building to building. And this is something that would make it very difficult for any ground incursion to be swift and successful and to end in the scenario that the Israelis would like it to end in, which is, of course, the liberation and the freeing of these hostages, Simone.
Hala, we're going to leave this map up on the screen. I want to put the map back up because as you were discussing this, everything to the right of the red line, that is Israel. And these dots, the red dots that are on the map, these are the places that Hala was just talking about, places where the initial infiltrations happened. These are residential areas, if you will. Everything to the left of that line is Gaza, what is known as the Gaza Strip. Huma, you served at the State Department during Secretary Clinton's tenure as Secretary of State. You were also a part of the advance team in 1998 that went to Gaza, went to the Strip in advance of President Clinton's historic visit there. He visited Gaza City on that trip. Talk to me a little bit about the people, because as we are discussing what is unfolding in the region, there are thousands of people that live along just that strip that we are talking about, the 24 the miles in the Gaza envelope.
Well, Simone, you're exactly right. I mean, it's important to make the differentiation that this is Hamas versus the Palestinian people. And just as, you know, we've been hearing for the last 36 or so hours now, everything about this has been shocking. The surprise, the size, the strategy, the speed. And you know, there's been a lot of sort of assertions about what might be happening and what could be happening. We know why, we don't know how, but the humanitarian element of it is something that should not be forgotten. You know, I was talking to a friend who was in Israel. She's made it safely to Dubai, but her family, her niece, lives in one of those red dots right in the middle in the Kfar Aza kibbutz, and her niece, husband, and their baby were killed in the early hours yesterday. And on the other side, I talked to my Palestinian friend, and his family in Gaza is sitting there, you know, waiting. They've been, you know, they're listening to these announcements by the Prime Minister of Israel to evacuate Gaza, but we all know that that's, you know, not really possible. And so the humanitarian elements, and I, you know, I want to underscore, because Simone, you and I talked about this a few weeks ago when we were talking about this potential deal that the Saudi Israelis and the Americans were talking about normalizing relations. But back then, when I was in the White House, and yes, I did advance that trip, and yes, I was at Camp David in 2000 when Yasser Arafat was there to potentially make a deal at the time. It was the central sort of foreign policy. We were all talking about the Palestinian issue, and that has, you know, since fallen, you know, away as more of a regional issue. We've had other countries in the Gulf who've obviously, as you know, normalized relations. And I think once, you know, the dust settles, which is going to be a really long time. I mean, the fact that you keep playing this father who's lost his, you know, wife and two daughters, doesn't know where they are. There's a mother who's been talking about her teenagers. She was on the phone with them. They were taken. And she said, even in war, there are rules. So there's so much, you know, there's so many calls happening, obviously, at the U.S. government level. But now you also have regional players that could play a role here. And once this moves forward, we really need to figure out how there is more leadership that comes towards actually putting together a final plan so there's more integration and less destruction.
Thank you. Huma Abedin, NBC's Courtney Kube, and Hala Garani. We appreciate your time.